There's a pattern I've seen that kills more startups than anything else. More than lack of product market fit, more than lack of funding, more than bad execution or wrong strategy. But after having coached 500 founders and executives, and that pattern that keeps showing up is the fact that founders do not take care of themselves. They lose that inner biological battle, which causes them to lose the outer battle. If you spend 6 weeks with enough founders, you're gonna see that same thing pop up over and over. They overwork themselves, they stop eating well, they stop sleeping, they stop exercising, they work crazy hours, and that causes them to fall into an anxious state where they're making worse decisions. And those bad decisions, they compound, they become worse and worse. And guess what happens? You have to stay up longer, you have to do more work, you're under more pressure. And that cycle is what kills people because it is not sustainable. And that requires your state of mind and your state of body to be optimized for success. So here's the framework that I've used with hundreds of founders to ensure that success. Let's start with layer one, and that's your biological foundation. Here's the simple truth. The success of your startup is determined by the founder's nervous system and the founder's ability to make the right decisions. The startup cannot escape that. And too many people I work with sit there and they say to themselves, I'll get sleep over the weekend. I'll catch up on sleep. I'll start exercising when we're done with this funding round. I'll start eating well when we hit our growth numbers. I'll start paying myself well so that I can, live in a good situation. It's always in the future. It's always, once we do this, once we do that. But guess what? You're never going to get those goals if you're not setting yourself up for success. And when you don't take care of your biology, that compounds. The rest of your team sees, hey, my CEO is anxious. My CEO is not sleeping well. He's erratic, or she's making bad decisions. And guess what? That puts pressure on them to do the same thing. It puts pressure on them to not only not take care of themselves, to work crazy hours, but it also instills fear that arises from a CEO or a founder who's erratic and not emotionally stable, a CEO or founder who cannot make decisions because they're filled with anxiety, they're indecisive, or they change their mind every day depending on the emotions that are played that day, whether they got enough sleep, whether their partner yelled at them, or whatever it may be. You become the victim of your biology, and your employees become the secondhand victims of that biology as well. You see, this is a recursive thing. It compounds, but it compounds in the wrong direction. And this is what I call the biopsychosocial performance model. It simply states that before anything can come, whether it's growth or success or operational efficiency, you first have to take care of three simple things: your biology, your psychology, and your sociology. Everything else sits on top. And I think one of the best ways to take care of this is through the flow model. What does flow tell us? If you do activities that are at the highest threshold of your abilities and challenge, that is when you grow, and that is when you do your best work. So what does that mean? It means that when I work with founders and executives, I tell them, ask yourself three simple questions. Number one, is this activity I'm doing the highest leverage use of my time? Number two is this activity something that I could do better than anyone else? Is it something I'm really good at? And third is this activity something that I enjoy? When the answer to these three things is no, I often find that executives lose motivation, they lose productivity, they lose energy. And I'm telling you right now, startups are about sustainability. It's about how long can you keep going. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So if I can give you one simple tip to do right now in the next 60 seconds, write down all those activities that you're doing right now and ask yourself the three simple questions that I stated earlier. Should you really be doing these things? And if the answer is no, there's only three options. You either delegate it, you automate it, or you drop it. Don't try to do it yourself. So you fix the biology, and then you can fix the psychology, which gets us into layer two, the psychological layer. Here's the truth that I see with too many founders. It's that they're trying to avoid having to face some realities that are painful, that hurt their self-esteem or their self-image. They want to make sure that they still feel valuable, that they still feel loved, that they still feel smart. It really is about emotions. And those emotions, if you're not aware of them, they control you. There's a famous Jung quote, Carl Jung, the famous psychologist in the 20th century, where he says, if we do not make the unconscious conscious, then the unconscious controls us. And that is the reality with too many founders. They hide behind things like, we should relitigate decisions. I question the strategy we're doing. They say, I don't know if this is the right path we're on. What they're really saying underneath all of this is, I'm anxious, I'm indecisive. I fear that this strategy that I put in place is going to fail and it's going to make me look bad. Or I fear that the strategy or this activity that my team is doing is going to succeed and I'll feel like I'm no longer needed, that I'm not important. These are the patterns that I see kill founders over and over again and kill their team because it makes them come into a place of learned helplessness where they learn that doesn't matter what I do, doesn't matter what I say. My CEO 1 week from now or 2 weeks from now is going to change his mind. He's going to say that the work I'm doing is useless, that the activities I'm engaging in are meaningless. So why even try? Why even do anything? And all the CEO had to do was think deeper about where's this anxiety coming from? Where's this indecision coming from? Where's this fear of accountability coming from? Is it me trying to avoid facing the reality that I can fail, that my team can see me as fallible? So how do we get rid of that fear of being wrong, the fear of being judged? I have a really simple method I tell my founders, and that's a hypothesis-driven approach, right? What scientists do, what probably you did when you first started your company, which is to say, hey, I believe that if we do X, we're going to get Y result. And I'll know this when I see ABC, and give a time frame. We're going to run this for 2 weeks. We're going to run this for 3 weeks. And do not let yourself change that. Do not let that fear and anxiety get in the way, because no hypothesis can be properly validated without the experiment running the full course and for us to see the end results that come. The end results are what we judge on, not the activities that are happening during the experiment. And too many founders I work with, they get anxious when they don't see things going the way they expect during the experimental phase. So they cut things short. But again, what does that tell your team? It tells them your work is meaningless, that I can change my mind at any moment, that the work that you're doing is meaningless, that you'll never get to see the fruits of your labor. You'll always sit there wondering, what if? What if we could have done things differently? What if the execution would have worked? I just needed 1 more week. That is how you set a team up to have low motivation, low productivity, and to stop caring. Instead, they say, hey team, it's your job to figure out what the right way is. Read my mind. They hear that, oh, my CEO wants me to read his mind. I have to guess what he wants. I have to guess what I need to do next. And what that leads to is people being afraid of showing you things, of letting things play out, of making decisions. And the story you tell yourself, the pattern you fall into is my team is failing. My team is not good enough. I need to find a better team. Again, the reality is that you're just indecisive and you don't want to take accountability for the decisions you make. What I always tell the founders I work with is run a fake door test, right? If you believe that something you're saying is wrong, is truly wrong, then try to create the smallest experiments, the smallest way that you can prove to yourself and the rest of the team that this is wrong. So for example, if you think the way your team's going about go-to-market is the wrong way, give them an alternative way to test out whether or not the way you're thinking is the right go-to-market. And that means that you have to force yourself to give them an alternative and make it low effort and low amounts of involvement so that you don't face this immense pressure of making a decision that's going to eat up so much of your resources and that it might be the wrong decision. All I want you to do is just force yourself to make a decision, the smallest decision possible, and give your team something that they can run with. I always love doing that fake door test. And here's where we get to layer 3, which I think is fundamental, but requires all of those previous layers to be in place. And here's the simple rule, that if you do not instrument that truth is valued and saying the truth is safe, then you will always live in a bubble that is of your own creation. Listen, you could fix your biology, you could fix your psychology, but if you don't put habits in place, you don't put behaviors in place that stop the worst parts of your nature from coming out and instilling fear in the team when they share something, or that when you're in a meeting, cutting someone short, telling them why they're wrong. Because here's the reality, is that you can be perfectly self-aware. I've seen it over and over. Founders will say, oh yeah, I do take extreme ownership. I'm a servant leader. I let my team have psychological safety. Yet the reality of it is that you have decades of learned behavior that has been reinforced in you over and over. And those little behaviors pop out in reality and cause your team discomfort and cause the culture to drift from where you want to be. So you have to put instrumentation in place that nudge you towards the behaviors in the company that you want. So what's the first way we do that? This is what I call discipline number 1. And it's to create a living memory of the company. So many times I see founders and executives and teams make decisions on calls, but then no one writes that down. No one really has true ownership. So a week later, nothing's been done. And the CEO comes back and wonders, why is there no movement? Or a week later, people do something, but then the CEO or the founder says, hey, that wasn't what I thought we were going to do. Why are we doing this? This is the wrong thing. And that's why you have to implement discipline 1. That memory that comes from recording our calls, that comes from forcing ourselves to write down our strategies, write down our beliefs, and to indicate what it is that we're trying to do as a company, who's going to do it, how do we know it's a success, and how are we going to do it. That becomes your living memory that protects both your team and you from going off of vibes and going off of hearsay or going off of whatever you remember at the moment. This all has to be on paper because we need to turn vibes and whatever the CEO says into reality. When we're working off vibes and just calls, we're living in a fog. And that is not how companies succeed. The second operational discipline I want you to embody is to make the truth safe. We've talked about this a lot, but how do you make it actually operational? You have to give your team multiple ways of bringing you the truth. You have to be able to bring you the truth qualitatively through spoken ways, through anonymous surveys, through meetings, but also quantitatively through data, through information, through internal surveying. So how do we go about this? Having a Slack bot that every week asks the team anonymously, what are you thinking? What's going on? What's something we should be doing that we're not? What's something that only you know, the rest of the company doesn't? And then the other part that I really like is analytics from the user base, analytics from the customers. We have to know what our customers are feeling. We have to know how our customers are using the product. Last thing I want you to operationalize, the third discipline, is lifecycle. We often talk about customer lifecycle, but there's an employee lifecycle as well. Too many founders, they optimize at the beginning of these life cycles, right? They focus on getting as many leads as possible. Let me hire a sales team. Let me hire the best salespeople. I'm going to pay them the most. But once the employees are there, once the customers are there, the eyes of the CEO are no longer on them. And what ends up happening is the team, let's say their employees, they don't grow the way they want. They don't get the pay increase that they want. And they lose motivation. They lose productivity. And they end up leaving sooner than you want. And it's the same thing with your customers. Once they're acquired or they're onboarded, you don't think about, how am I going to keep them around as much as you should? I see this pattern so often with founders. Oh, this customer, they had all these excuses or they just were a bad fit, or the reason they left is because of my customer success team, rather than me as a CEO taking ownership and saying, maybe I put too many resources, too much time into that early part of the funnel and put all the resources in my sales team and not enough care and time into my product team or my CS team to ensure these employees stay. The reality is that acquisition is the starting point and life cycle is the marathon. Your emotional state, which controls your beliefs, which controls your strategies, which controls how well you execute. And the only way you're going to find out what works for you is through your ability to keep trying different things. So if you find yourself as a founder in this indecision fatigue, if you find yourself wondering what path to take, if you find yourself confused and anxious, I have a great assessment for you to take. This assessment is completely free, but it's going to help you diagnose what is that in you that's holding you back. Is it your biology? Is it your psychology? Is it you're just not putting in the right instrumentation and processes in your company? And once you have that clarity, it's going to give you a step-by-step checklist of what you need to do to get yourself there.